Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. She once said I was predictable, and maybe I was. I wore the same faded blue hoodie on Sundays, made the same grocery list every Thursday, and told the same dumb story about my high school track meet every time we passed the local stadium. She used to laugh. Lately, she didn't even pretend. I think she thought I was too afraid to leave. And she was right, for a long time. Until I stopped being scared, and just became empty. 3 weeks ago, I found her other phone. Not her usual iPhone. The second one she claimed was for work emergencies. It was tucked behind the books on the top shelf, right above the old photo albums we hadn't touched in years. No password. That's what hit hardest. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. I saw everything. His name was Trevor. There were heart emojis, hotel bookings, and something that made me physically nauseous. A voice message where she laughed and said, "He still folds my laundry." I swear, it's like living with a polite ghost. That night, I folded her laundry again. But I didn't cry. I just stared at the dryer. I knew I'd never use it again. I started small. Sold a few things on Marketplace. Canceled my gym membership. Pulled cash out in $100 increments. I booked a one-way train ticket under a name I hadn't used in years. My middle name, Spencer. She never liked that name. Said it sounded soft. Fitting, I guess. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother. Not my coworker. Not even my mom. The plan was mine alone, and it felt sacred. At 4:38 a.m., I slipped out of bed. She didn't stir. I packed everything I truly needed into one old duffel bag. Passport, charger, the copy of Catcher in the Rye she gave me before she stopped reading anything I wrote. I placed the keys in her favorite cereal bowl and walked out the door barefoot, carrying my shoes. No drama. No lights. No sound. By the time she poured her coffee and wondered where I was already halfway to Montana. She thought I'd be home by noon. But by noon, I didn't even belong to that life anymore. The train hummed beneath me like a lullaby I didn't deserve. I sat in that narrow seat by the window, watching the suburbs dissolve into fields and then into forests. I didn't look back. Not at the platform. Not at the town. Not even in the mirror when I washed my hands in that tiny, metallic bathroom on board. I didn't want to see the man who'd spent so long pretending to be enough. She called me 3 times before 9 a.m. I know that because I could still see her number flash on the screen of my old phone before I powered it down and dropped it into the trash bin near the snack cart. I watched it fall between a half-eaten muffin and a crumpled napkin. That little glowing rectangle, filled with every memory, every text, every photo of our life together, landed like it was nothing. And somehow, I didn't feel lighter. Not yet. You know what's crazy? I don't even think she cheated for love. I think she did it out of boredom. She wanted someone with rough hands and dangerous stories. And I was the guy who alphabetized our spice rack and cried during movie trailers. She told her lover things I never imagined she thought about me. That I was too soft, too routine, too emotionally dependent. Maybe she wasn't wrong. Maybe I did hope too much, trust too much, give too much. But the part that gutted me, truly gutted me, was hearing her say, "He wouldn't leave me if I told him. He needs me too much." That's when I realized she never feared losing me. She feared being held accountable. I spent so long thinking silence made me stronger. That not fighting back was noble. That absorbing the pain made me the bigger person. But all it really did was teach her I was safe to disrespect. Predictable. Foldable. Forgettable. So I became unpredictable. I'd already emptied our joint account days earlier. Quietly. Just enough to leave her what was fair. I wasn't trying to hurt her, just remove myself. She still had the house, the car, the dog. I'd left her everything except the one thing she never thought I'd take, myself. Around lunchtime, as I sat in a diner 2 towns over from wherever the hell I was going, I saw her post on Facebook. It was a selfie, smiling, captioned, "Crazy morning. Anyone know a good locksmith?" Followed by a laughing emoji. I stared at that post for a long time. It didn't hurt. Not like I thought it would. In fact, I smiled. Because for once, I knew something she didn't. She thought I was being petty. Or dramatic. Maybe I was. But she had no idea that I'd already mailed a notarized separation agreement to her office. No idea I'd scheduled a cancellation of my name from every shared utility. No idea I'd already spoken to an attorney in another state. To her, it was a game. A blip. A tantrum. To me, it was my resurrection. The waitress brought my food. Scrambled eggs, dry toast, black coffee. I hadn't ordered that. I'd asked for pancakes. But I didn't say anything. I just ate quietly. Because even with the wrong order, I felt more seen in that diner than I had in my own home in years. And as I stared out the window, watching strangers pass by, I realized something. I wasn't escaping anymore. I was arriving. By the next morning, I was in a tiny roadside motel with floral curtains that smelled like thyme. The walls were thin, and I could hear someone coughing through the vent. It didn't matter. I slept. Not well, not peacefully, but I slept without checking the clock every hour, wondering when she'd come home, or if she would come home at all. That morning, I made myself coffee in the little plastic machine by the sink. No oat milk, no cinnamon sprinkle like she used to do, just 2 sugar packets and powdered creamer. Still, it tasted more honest than anything I'd had in that house for the last year. I checked my email and saw a message from our internet provider. The account transfer went through. Another from my lawyer confirming receipt of the documents. And then, the one I didn't expect, a blank email from her. No subject, no body. Just her name. Like a ghost trying to knock from the other side of the wall. I didn't reply. I sat there in that creaky chair, staring out at the parking lot, wondering what her face looked like right now. Did she scream when she realized the bank account balance had changed? Did she tear through the house calling my name? Or did she just shrug, roll her eyes, and assume I'd be back? She underestimated one thing. Not my anger, but my endurance. I could take pain. I'd done it for years. But I was done taking blame for her boredom. I remembered something strange while staring at that window. The last time she held my hand in public was almost 2 years ago. We were walking through the grocery store, and she pulled my hand toward the freezer aisle because she wanted ice cream. I remember thinking, God, I missed this, even though it only lasted 30 seconds. That was the last time I felt wanted. I left behind more than just a house. I left a version of myself she helped create, the yes, dear version. The one who always asked if she needed anything on his way home, even when she never asked how my day was. The one who stopped playing music in the car because she found my playlists too depressing. The one who learned to apologize first, even when I didn't know what I'd done. That man stayed in that kitchen, beside the cereal bowl with the keys. Around noon, I walked into a local barber shop and asked for a cut. A short one. The kind I used to get in college when I still had opinions. The barber didn't ask many questions, just gave me a nod, the kind men give each other when they recognize something broken but familiar. Afterward, I stood outside the shop and stared at my reflection in the glass. It was subtle, but I looked different, like someone trying to come back to life. Not fully there, but trying. Then came the text. Not just one, 4. All from her. Where are you? Eugene, this isn't funny. Call me now. Are you seriously doing this? She hadn't called me Eugene in months. It was always Gene when she was annoyed, or just silence when she was indifferent. I turned the phone off. The old me would have typed out a long message. Something soft. Maybe even an apology, just to calm things down. Not this time. She didn't get to panic just because her backup plan walked out the door. Let her wonder. Let her pace. Because for the first time in a very, very long time, I wasn't waiting for her to come home. I was home, and it was anywhere she couldn't reach. That evening, as I sat in a dim cafe off the highway, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard, my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't her. It was a mutual friend. Liam. We hadn't talked in months. He was the kind of guy who floated between friend groups, the social glue, always neutral. The message was short. Hey man, everything okay? Kimberly's blowing up, everyone's phone looking for you. I stared at that screen for a while, debating whether I should lie, joke, or ignore it altogether. In the end, I just wrote, I'm safe. Don't get involved. And I meant it. Because what was coming next wasn't a plea for love or reconciliation. It was her trying to regain control of the narrative. Kimberly didn't like messes unless she created them. I paid the bill and left cash, walking out into the kind of October wind that makes your jacket feel too thin. I felt it in my bones, that old anxious pulse in my throat. But I kept walking. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing where I was. I didn't even want to give me the chance to second-guess this escape. By the time I checked into another cheap motel, she'd found my mother. That part hit harder than I expected. I'd never wanted to drag my mom into this. She's fragile, the kind of woman who believes marriage is supposed to be painful sometimes, and that forgiveness is holy. But when I called her, she surprised me. Are you safe? She asked. Yeah. I whispered, sitting on the corner of the motel bed. Then stay away from her. I didn't know what to say. There was no lecture, no guilt, just that sentence, firm and final. And then she added, I've seen the way she looks through you. I always hoped I was wrong. I think that was the moment I realized this wasn't just about leaving a woman. It was about shedding the version of myself that tolerated being invisible. Back in the motel, I turned on the old TV just to have noise in the background. But my mind wouldn't stop replaying one memory on a loop. The last vacation we took together, almost 2 years ago. She spent the whole time scrolling her phone while I pointed out things I thought she'd like. I planned every detail, the cabin, the trails, the little Italian place by the lake. She said thanks once, maybe. But the entire trip felt like I was dragging around a stranger in my wife's skin. And yet, I'd convinced myself it was just a phase. That she was stressed, tired, distracted. But now I see it for what it was. She wasn't distracted. She was done. She just didn't have the courage to admit it. Or maybe she thought I'd never leave, so there was no need to end it. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, I listened to the message. Her voice, sharp, rushed, a little unhinged. Eugene, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. If you want to talk, we can talk. But disappearing like this? It's cruel. Grow up. I didn't delete it. I listened to it 3 times. Not once did she ask if I was okay. Not once did she say she missed me. Just cruel. Child. Grow up. That was the final click in my head. The part that closed the door completely. Because the woman I married would have cried. Would have asked. Would have said something real. This one, this version, she was just mad she lost her audience. And I'm not her audience anymore. I'm not the ghost folding her laundry. I'm not the background noise to her double life. I'm out of the frame. Off the stage. Gone. And she has no idea who she's dealing with now. By the 3rd day of silence, she finally cracked. I didn't have to hear her voice to know it. I could see it in the flurry of emails that started pouring into the account I barely checked. The subject line said it all. We need to talk. You're being unfair. At least explain yourself. Then the one that made me laugh out loud, bitterly. You abandoned me. Abandoned. As if I hadn't spent the last 3 years slowly watching her walk away from me while standing in the same room. As if I hadn't begged in silence for her to just look up from her phone, from her schedule, from her other life, and see me. But that's the thing about women like Kimberly. They can lie without blinking, twist facts into fiction, and turn your quiet exit into their tragedy. It was never about love. It was about the story she could tell others. And now that I'd taken the ending from her, she was scrambling to rewrite it. I stayed holed up in a cheap Airbnb in a town with no Uber, no chain restaurants, and no one who knew my name. It was peaceful in that suffocating way you feel after holding your breath for too long. I wandered aimlessly during the day, drank awful gas station coffee, and people watched in the grocery store like it was a movie. That night, I got a message from someone I didn't recognize at first. The name was familiar, but I hadn't seen it in years. Amanda, her old college roommate. One of the only people who ever pulled me aside and quietly said, "You're too good to her." The message was short. I don't want to get in the middle, but she's telling people you ran off without warning. Just wanted you to know what she's saying. And just like that, the puzzle started coming together. Kimberly wasn't just confused. She was rebuilding the narrative. She'd be the wronged wife, left by the unstable husband who snapped and disappeared like a coward. I'd be the villain in her fresh story. I could see it clearly. The teary Facebook post, the vague allusions to emotional abandonment, the comments from her friends offering sympathy and wine nights. She needed me to be the problem, because if I wasn't, she'd have to face the truth that her betrayal wasn't just an accident. It was a decision, a daily one. Every time she texted that man, lied to my face, made love to me knowing she'd already given her heart to someone else. Those were choices. And she thought she could make all of them without consequences. I didn't respond to Amanda. I didn't have to. My absence was my statement. My silence was louder than anything I could have written. But I did take one small step that felt like a shout. I posted one single update on my social media, which I hadn't touched in over a year. It was a picture of the view outside my rental, a long, empty road stretching into the hills, with just 2 words as the caption, "Finally breathing." No name, no details, just that. And within minutes, the comments began. Some were supportive, others were confused. A few mutual friends messaged me privately, asking what happened. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not anymore. But I knew Kimberly saw it. She always checked. She needed to know what people thought, how they viewed her. That post. It would haunt her. Because it didn't accuse. It didn't beg. It didn't explain. It just existed. And in her world, where she controlled every detail of our life, that was the worst thing I could have done, stepped outside her script. She'd spent years choreographing the dance. I just finally stopped following her lead. It took less than a week for her entire narrative to unravel. One of our neighbors, Tom, the guy across the street who always smelled like burnt bacon and bad opinions, messaged me out of nowhere. He said he was sorry to hear I'd had a breakdown. A breakdown. That was the word she was going with. She told people I'd just packed a bag in a mental spiral and ran off in some kind of nervous episode. I almost respected her commitment to the fiction. Almost. But then he added something that stuck with me. She said you left your ring on the table. Dramatic, but poetic, I guess. That was when it hit me. I hadn't left my wedding ring on the table. It was still in my duffel bag, buried under a hoodie and a paperback I'd never finished. She made that part up. She wanted that image, the hollow husband's ring glinting in the morning sun, abandoned like a symbol of his failure. It was better for her story. Cleaner. That was the moment I stopped feeling sad. Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I realized I'd spent years with someone who didn't just manipulate situations. She rewrote reality when it didn't suit her version of events. Every fight we had ended with me apologizing, even if she started it. Every cold shoulder I got was somehow my fault for not anticipating her needs. Every tear she shed was a performance for sympathy. And I always bought front row seats. But not anymore. I booked a session with a therapist. Not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to carry her voice in my head anymore. The one that told me I was too needy, too soft, too small. I wanted to get loud in my own life again, even if that meant starting with a whisper. Meanwhile, her desperation shifted gears. She went from passive-aggressive texts to emotional landmines. One morning, I woke up to a voicemail, her sobbing. Not words, just crying. That strange, high-pitched kind that made my stomach churn. For a split second, I felt guilt. Like maybe I was being cruel. Like maybe disappearing was too harsh. But then I remembered the voice message I found weeks ago, the one she sent to him, laughing at how pathetic I was for still believing we were happy. Her tears weren't for me. They were for the control she'd lost. For the comfort of a man who cooked dinner and paid the bills while she played dress-up in someone else's arms. I started writing, journaling, typing everything I felt without editing myself. The anger, the confusion, the little moments that once seemed insignificant, like how she used to roll her eyes when I talked about my job, or how she started wearing perfume again, but only when she went to run errands. It all came back, and when I laid it out, I could finally see it clearly. She didn't want a husband. She wanted a prop, a mirror to admire herself in. And when I stopped reflecting what she wanted to see, she moved on, emotionally, physically, silently. Except I didn't stay silent. I reached out to Amanda, her old roommate, and thanked her for being honest. She said, "I always knew something was off, Eugene. I'm glad you got out." It was the first time in a while I felt like someone saw me not as a victim, but as a survivor. And then came the moment I didn't expect. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Not from her. From him. The man she cheated with. Trevor. I stared at his name on the screen for a long time. I hadn't saved the number, but I recognized it from the old phone records I downloaded before I left. I didn't answer. I didn't even let it ring twice. I just blocked the number and tossed the phone face down on the bed. Whatever he wanted to say didn't matter. He was her problem now. By the end of the second week, she began showing up in places I didn't think she'd dare. I'd underestimated how deeply she hated not being in control, and when she couldn't reach me, she started targeting the people around me. She called my sister, acting concerned, said she was worried I might hurt myself, that I'd always had depressive tendencies, and that she was just trying to help. She cried on the phone, apparently. My sister told me afterward that she almost believed her, almost. But then she asked Kimberly one simple question. Why didn't you tell us he was struggling sooner? And Kimberly went silent. That silence was her first real confession. The truth is, I'd been disappearing long before I left. Not physically, but emotionally. dimming myself so she wouldn't complain about my intensity, shrinking my opinions so we didn't argue, holding my tongue when I found her lies curled up like snakes between her half-truths. And she liked that version of me, quiet, predictable, manageable, until she didn't. Until she found someone more exciting, more reckless, more unattached. But when she lost both of us, me, and whatever fantasy she'd built around him, she started flailing. Like a child who breaks her toy and suddenly wants it back, just because it's no longer hers. She messaged again that evening. A wall of text, over 500 words. It started off kind, nostalgic even. She talked about our first apartment, the red walls in the kitchen, the cat we almost adopted. She said she missed how I used to read aloud without realizing it, and that she kept one of my old hoodies because it still smelled like safety. But then, halfway through, the shift came. She said I was being cold, that my disappearing act made me no better than the cowards I always complained about. She said I was punishing her for being human. Human. That was the word she used for betrayal. And just like that, the guilt I'd been carrying evaporated, because I realized she didn't feel remorse. She felt exposed. I hadn't just left. I'd left quietly. I hadn't screamed, hadn't thrown her clothes out the window, hadn't posted screenshots of the messages to humiliate her. No, I just walked. And people don't know what to do with that kind of silence. It forces them to look inward, and Kimberly never looked anywhere that made her feel small. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Not because I was angry, but because there was simply nothing left to say. She had burned the bridge, paved it over, built a highway on top of it, and then asked why I never came home. That night, I sat on the porch of the guest house I was renting from an old couple who barely spoke to me. I liked it that way. The wind was sharp, the sky clear, and for the first time in years, I felt still. Not numb, not angry, just still. And then, something strange happened. My old boss called. He said Kimberly had shown up to my former office, asking if I'd left any paperwork behind. She claimed it was urgent, but she didn't ask for HR. She asked for him. My boss said she seemed off, like she was fishing, not for files, for stories, something she could use. And then he said, I don't know what happened, Eugene, but I just want you to know, we always saw how hard you tried, even if she didn't. That sentence hit harder than anything she'd ever said, because he was right. I did try. I gave that woman everything I had. And when that wasn't enough, she didn't tell me. She just opened a new chapter with someone else and left me reading the same page, thinking we were still writing it together. But I'm not stuck in her book anymore. I'm the author now. It's strange how healing doesn't arrive with a bang, but in quiet, almost unnoticeable moments. Like the first night, I slept 8 full hours without dreaming of her. Or when I made dinner and caught myself humming, not to fill the silence, but because the silence felt good. Safe. Mine. A month had passed since I left. She had stopped messaging, or at least, I stopped seeing them. Her last email came with a subject line that read, Please just talk to me. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because by then, I understood something I never had before. Closure isn't something you get from the person who broke you. It's something you give yourself the moment you decide their version of you no longer matters. And I decided. Finally, I found work at a small hardware store in a quiet town with no drama, no mutual friends, no one who knew who I used to be. Just a place where I could breathe. The owner, Carl, is in his 60s and wears socks with sandals, but he's got this calm about him like he's already lived 5 lives and is just taking a break now. He doesn't ask questions. He trusts me to open up when I'm ready. That's the kind of energy I want around me now. One afternoon, I passed a small bookstore with a chalkboard sign out front that read, You can start over. Yes, you. Right now. I stood there for a long time. The old me would have rolled my eyes at something like that. Called it corny. But standing there in that crisp autumn air, I realized that sign was exactly what I needed to see. Not because I didn't know it already, but because it felt like permission. I walked inside and bought a notebook. The first page is blank. But not for long. This isn't a story of revenge. I didn't slash tires or air dirty laundry. I didn't humiliate her the way she quietly humiliated me for years. No, I chose peace. I chose absence. I chose to let her explain my silence however she wanted while I rebuilt my voice. I don't know where she is now. I don't care. Because I know where I am. And for the first time in years, I'm not just surviving. I'm living. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If you made it to the end, I want to hear from you. What moment in this story hit you hardest? Was it the voicemail? The second phone? The quiet goodbye? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply walk away. See you next time.